Spooky Stories by Henry Edward Everding.
Once upon a time, on a very dark night, when the clouds were very heavy and floating very close to the top of all the buildings of the town, so that the lights were extremely blurred and it was hard to see outside. There was a little boy and a little girl who had to stay home all alone one night. And they were watching a television show. And it was a story about ghosts and spooks and vampires and mummies and marmalade. And as they were watching this story, they heard the wind going. And they heard a door creak. They looked around and they saw nothing. But they heard some other strange noises in the night. And they looked out the window and they couldn't see a thing because it was so dark outside. And then all of a sudden a shadow went by the window. And they looked out the window again and there was absolutely nothing. All they saw was a plant in the window and a pumpkin. And then they heard a voice saying, "Oh, oh." And they looked around the room and there was nothing. But they could hear this voice still saying, "Oh." They turned off the television set because they thought it might be a television, but it wasn't, because the voice kept calling, "Oh." They looked around. They turned off all the lights because they were afraid if they had the lights on that people could see them and get them. And then the voice said, "I see you. Help me." They didn't know what to do. So they crept up very slowly to the window. And they looked out the window. They saw nothing. And then the voice seemed to be louder. It said, "Help, I see you." And then they felt the pumpkin on the window. And the pumpkin was warm and it started to glow. And it started to vibrate. And they could hear it pulsing like a heartbeat. Boom, 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 boom. And all of a sudden, out of the pumpkin came a hand. And the hand grabbed the little boy by the arm and it said, "I've got you." And the little boy looked at his arm and there were great big red and purple prints on his arm. And out of the prints there grew little pumpkins. Well, what is going to happen to our little boy and girl? We'll have to wait and find out, because right now we have a message from our sponsors. I wonder if they have anything to say about pumpkin seeds. And now, back to our story. As you recall, the pumpkin seemed to come alive and grabbed the little boy by the arm and left prints, red and purple, on his arm. And there grew out of his arm little pumpkins. And now, let's see what happens.
Bigger and bigger and bigger. And there were more hands reaching out, fuzzy, creepy, crawly hand. More red and purple marks all over him. And he got so many purple marks on him, he turned into a pumpkin with a hand coming out of his head. Started toward his sister, getting closer and closer. The girl screamed. You're around the throat. All the prints all over her neck. There were pumpkins growing all over her neck, and creepy, crawly, fuzzy hands were coming out. Hands were crawling out, grabbing her all over the place, pulling her hair out, screaming and screaming and screaming, and she couldn't stand it. They were both two pumpkin monsters sitting in the living room. Fuzzy, creepy, crawly hands reaching out of him all over the place, with the voice crying out, "Help me!" Other voices crying and yelling and laughing, "Ha ha ha!"
Soon, before the little boy or the little girl knew what was happening, it just seemed that they heard another sound. It was sort of like man blowing his nose in the other room, but it wasn't quite that. And pretty soon it was the sound of a rushing wind and the gushing of water and the soft petals of snow falling upon them. And it was like a myriad of beautiful sights and sounds, and yet it was black darkness. And soon they realized that they had not only turned into a pumpkin, but that they were inside a pumpkin. And that the voice that they had heard before saying, "Help me," was their own voices yelling, "Help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me, help me." And they were trying to get out of the pumpkin. And it was strange because they could see through the pumpkin even though they were inside the pumpkin. And they could look into the room where they had been before. And as they were looking, the door to the room opened. And in to the room came their father. And their father looked around and said, Where did the children go? And how come that pumpkin is so big? What has happened in this place? Well, before we continue with the conclusion to our Spooks for the Kooks, we will now have this word from our sponsors.
Raw beef patties with sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on the sesame bun. Here's a message from McDonald's. If you say what I've just said 2 times, you will get 2 of what I just said at McDonald's. I will repeat it again for you to know. 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on the sesame seed bun. At McDonald's, we do it all for you. Thank you.
Well, now we can turn back to our delightful little story. It's Kooks for Spooks, or if you prefer, Spooks for Kooks. The father came into the room and he looked around and he saw that his 2 children were missing and that the pumpkin was larger than he thought it was when he had left earlier that day. Well, as he came in the room, he said, Well, I wonder where they went to. Well, maybe they went outside to play. Good heavens, it's almost 5:30. I'm about 15 minutes late. It's so dark outside, I can't understand why it's so dark tonight. Well, I wonder where they went to. Maybe they just went down to the store to get some candy, but they'll be back pretty soon. Well, now I guess I better try to figure out what I'm going to have for dinner. Well, let's see. Look in the icebox. Not too much, just some frozen. Well, maybe I'll have some hamburgers and I'll fix that up with a little bit of salad. That ought to be pretty good. I think they'd like that. Wonder where they could be. What's that strange noise? Sounds almost like somebody saying help, but it's just the wind. Could have sworn that pumpkin was smaller this morning. Well, maybe I just haven't looked at it for about a month. Well, it's sort of strange, isn't it? Well, I wonder, let's see, what would they like? Yeah, if they don't come back too soon, I know what. I think I'll make a great big surprise. That's an idea. Where's that recipe? Here it is. Well, let's see. Yeah, I've got that. That. Yeah. Doggone, I've got all the ingredients. I think I'll just get right to work. Yeah, I'll put this hamburger in the oven. That'll get it thawed out, and then I can fix up the hamburgers. While all that's getting done, I think I could get this thing whipped up into shape in no time at all. When they get back, will they ever be surprised? Because you know what, they're going to have a special dessert tonight, and it's going to be pumpkin pie. Well, that's the end of our story. It's the end of the children, too. But I hope they were sweet children, because who wants a sour pumpkin pie?